We are incredibly excited to be here with you today on this Meet the Authors event. So this is being co-hosted by the Diversity Committee and the Diversity in the Profession Committee of the ABA section of taxation. And my name is Lana Villalobos. I'm chair of the Diversity Committee. And I'm really happy to have with us here today, Mary Teresa Vasquez and Anthony Head, who are co-authors of the biography on Judge Vasquez, from the Texas cotton fields to the United States Tax Court, the life of Juan F. Vasquez. So we're very excited to have you here today. I just wanted to take a few moments to introduce our panelists and then just give you an overview of how this is going to work today. So as I mentioned, we have Mary Teresa Vasquez, who goes by Terry, and who is also Judge Vasquez's wife. But she, prior to authoring this biography, she authored another book titled Mi Mamacita Tiene Alzheimer's, My Beloved Mother Has Alzheimer's. So not only is she a published writer, but she was also a registered nurse for over 40 years in her lifetime, which is chronicled in the book and the biography. We also have with us here Anthony Head, who is the other co-author of the biography. Anthony's a writer, an author, and an editor, and he's published books and articles and publications like Texas Highways and Reader's Digest. His most recent book is called Spirit, The Life and Art of Jesse Trevino, is ultimately what brought Anthony, there we go, shadowing of the book. But that's ultimately what brought Anthony and Terry together and what culminated in this biography that was ultimately written. That's also found in the first couple of pages of the biography. So thank you for joining us, Terry and Anthony. We're incredibly excited to have you here with us today. And we also have with us Professor Alice Abreu, who's going to be moderating today's panel. Professor Alice Abreu is the Honorable Nelson A. Diaz Professor of Law and the Director of the Temple Center for Tax, Law, and Public Policy at Temple University Beasley School of Law. Welcome, Professor Abreu. Thanks so much for moderating today's panel. So today's discussion is going to be in two parts. So the first part of the discussion is going to be the program. So Terry, Anthony, and Professor Abreu are going to provide a discussion on the biography, an overview of the biography, do a few readings from the book. And then we're going to open the second part to a Q&A session. So everybody other than the speakers will be muted throughout the entirety of the program. But we will have, there are two ways to participate. One is the chat function. For those of you who are newer to Zoom, if you go towards the bottom of your screen, you should be able to see a button that says chat, and you can open up your chat window there and enter a message or a question you have. And you please feel free, if you have any questions as they arise during the first part of the program, feel free to type them in. We'll reserve them for the end, but that way you don't forget your question if something comes up in the middle of the program. And then the other way to participate, which will happen at the Q&A portion, is that we will be, since everybody is muted, we will be requesting that you use your reactions button, which is also at the very bottom. It should be towards the bottom of your screen. It's a button that says reactions. I'm going to test it out now. And you should be able to click on the icon that says raise hand. And so when you do that, we will get a signal that you would like to ask a question, and then we will unmute your mic and have you participate. But we'll go over that in the Q&A portion. And worst case scenario, you can wave if that's not working and there's a question that you have, we want you to participate. So we don't want that to be a deterrent, but we'll chat about that once we get to the Q&A session. So with that, one other thing I just wanted to mention is that the panel is being recorded. So just keep that in mind. I think you should have gotten a little message acknowledging the recording for today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Professor Alice Abreu to get us going.
Thank you, Lani, for that very kind and informative introduction. It is my distinct privilege to host this conversation with the authors of this important book on the life of tax court judge Juan Vasquez. The book is important not only because it tells the life story of the first Latino judge on the U.S. tax court, but because it is a story of love, very hard work, the value of family and community, as well as of serendipity and the importance of being open to new ideas and possibilities. I want to begin by setting the stage for what I hope will be a lively conversation with the authors of the book, who Lonnie introduced, Terry Vasquez and her co-author, Anthony Head. To set that stage, I want to give you an overview of Judge Vasquez's story, complete with some of the pictures that appear in the book, so that Terry and Anthony can provide further depth by reading a few excerpts from the book and discussing their perspectives on the events described in those excerpts. Referring to what I will do as setting the stage is particularly appropriate here because it was a stage that brought Juan and Terry together when they were seniors in high school. Before I begin, I want to confess that it is difficult for me to refer to Judge Vasquez as Juan. I have always and always known him as Judge Vasquez, but the book does such a great job of introducing us to the Juan who becomes Judge Vasquez that, like the book, I'm going to refer to him as Juan, which is the name that he has, rather than Judge, which is the position that he now holds, except when I'm referring to him in that position. So as it says on page 3 of the book, Juan was born in Texas 73 years ago today on June 24th, 1948. Happy birthday, Judge Vasquez.
Thank you.
Shortly after Juan was born, his mother became ill with what turned out to be tuberculosis. Juan then went to live with his father's parents, and his 3 siblings went to live with his mother's parents. After 7 years, his mother was released from the sanatorium in which tuberculosis patients were treated and isolated at that time, and Juan and his siblings were able to live with her for 2 years until she died at the age of 34, when Juan was 9. The 4 Vasquez kids then went to live with their mom's parents, Jesus and Basilia Flores, in a household already filled with many children. This was an especially difficult time for Juan because, in addition to losing his mother, although his siblings had lived with his mom's parents before, Juan had not. And you'll now see a picture of Juan at the age of 9 at precisely that time. Juan's paternal grandfather, Jesus Flores, was a pescador, or cotton picker. He and his family spent summers picking cotton in a series of fields throughout Texas because cotton picking provided the entirety of the family's income for the year. At the end of the summer, Juan's grandmother and some of the kids, including Juan, returned home to go to school. But most of the older kids and Jesus, Juan's grandfather, continued picking cotton into the fall when the harvest was complete. It was a brutally hard life. Not only was there the heat and the sun and fields that were home to rattlesnakes and cotton balls covered with pickers that made fingers bleed, but the housing was dismal. You'll now see a picture of that housing. 3 families lived in that shack that you see on your screen, one in each of the rooms marked by each of the 3 doors. The lessons that Juan learned on those cotton fields, his grandfather's pride in being among the best cotton pickers, pescadores, as well as his grandfather's exhortation that you should try to be the best at whatever it is that you choose to do, even if it is something as humble as picking cotton, is a lesson that Juan internalized and carried with him throughout his life. That lesson, learned at his grandfather's side in those cotton fields, is so central to the person who the 9-year-old Juan became that years later, the artist Jesse Trevino, who you saw in Anthony's book earlier, Jesse Trevino memorialized that in the painting that forms the cover of the book. The painting is titled Los Pescadores, or the Cotton Pickers, and you now see that painting. Juan picked cotton with his grandfather until he was 15, and you'll now see a picture of him at 15 next to the truck into which the cotton went, I believe. Those early years also revealed a talent that was going to prove transformative for Juan. He was good with numbers. Every week on payday, his grandfather asked Juan to count the money they had been paid to make sure they had not been shortchanged. It is emblematic of Judge Vasquez's character that as Brant Hellwig, now dean of the law school at Washington and Lee University and formerly Judge Vasquez's law clerk, as he wrote in his foreword to the book, Juan Vasquez does not view his past as something that he has to overcome to be where he is today. Rather, he embodies that past and he celebrates it joyously. It is one of the reasons the Jesse Trevino portrait of him alongside his grandfather in the fields, Los Pescadores, which you just saw and you'll see again, hangs so prominently in the judge's chambers and serves as the cover of the book. But it took more than the experience of the cotton fields to transform Juan de Pescador into tax court judge Juan Vasquez. It also took Terry. Unlike Juan, for whom school was just not engaging, he just wasn't into it, Terry was an honor student who was determined to become a nurse. Meeting Terry changed Juan's trajectory. And Terry will now tell you how it happened while you see a picture of the two of them at their high school prom. So Terry, all yours.
Thank you, Professor. Chapter 5, When Juan Met Terry. 12th grade at Fox Tech High School was going to be different for Juan. The previous 3 years, or perhaps a little longer, had included some challenging academic times. But with continued stability with his home life, in other words, he wasn't moving from house to house anymore, and with a little good fortune, he was destined to find something that truly mattered toward his future, something that would bring him more than just some success in the classroom. At the beginning of his senior year, his enthusiasm for academics hadn't changed much, but he was still excited about going to school because as a junior, he'd become active in the Technical Theater, the school's performing arts department. Juan was also part of the production crew that helped produce the school plays under the direction of Mrs. Elaine Curran, whom also taught speech class and included students performing a play. And she asked Juan, who was not in her class, to help, and he happily agreed. During rehearsals one day, Juan found himself staring at the young woman he would marry, and he would walk with him nearly every step of the rest of his journey. Together, they would carve a life of happiness and fulfillment. And she was right there, standing on the stage in front of him. Neither one of them could have dreamed of the life they would share, but still, while preparing to help with the play entitled Somewhere Over the Rainbow, it's fair to say Juan quickly found himself over the moon, and she was playing the lead actress, Judy Garland. Juan said, "I was instantly inspired the first time I saw her," is how he summed up that moment. "I had the opportunity to see her practice every day. I was so impressed with her talent." He knew her name was Terry Schultz, and she was a senior. Juan thought she was quite poised as well as beautiful. And so enough it hit him. He should ask her on a date. Without knowing it, Juan had made the best decision of his life, but that didn't make it any easier to carry out through his intentions. She didn't seem to notice him staring at her while she delivered her lines on stage. After the show ended, he didn't want his chances to slip away and said, "I remember approaching her for a date, but I was rejected. She told me she wasn't dating anyone." But Juan then said, "After a month or so, the day that I summoned enough courage to talk to her again, I decided to follow her around and discovered that she came to school early and walked directly to the library. I then walked up right to her and laid down this king of romance pickup line and told her, 'You have the biggest tomato eyes I've ever seen.'" Terry smiled and thought to herself, He certainly wasn't original line to say, after all, I guess he was really serious dating me. After that day, she'd speak to me and eventually said that she would go on a date with me. After many days, we talked about plans for after graduation, and I found out that she was going to college to become a nurse, said Juan. Of course, I told her that I too wanted to go to college. And that is how Juan met Terry, and the rest is history.
Thank you, Terry. So as you've just heard, teenage love can be a wonderful thing. As Terry said, since Terry wanted to go to college, Juan went to his high school counselor and told him that he wanted to go to college. And as Juan recounts in the book, the counselor was stunned. After looking at his grades, which Juan says were mostly D's, as in dog, the counselor advised him that San Antonio College, a junior college, would accept even students with Juan's GPA. During his first semester, he got all C's except for an A in math, and his future began to change. When they graduated, Terry with the nursing degree she had aspired to for so long, and Juan with a degree in data processing, they also got married. Terry got a job as a nurse, and Juan transferred to the University of Texas in Austin to get a degree in accounting. As Juan points out, not only did he become the first in his family to go to college, but he was the first to make it through middle school. You'll now see a slide of their graduation and then a slide of their wedding. After graduating from the University of Texas, Juan began to work at an accounting firm where the most lucrative assignments, auditing private enterprises, went to white accountants, whereas the jobs auditing municipalities and tax-exempt organizations went to the few accountants of color. It was there that two pivotal things happened. First, Juan got bitten by the tax bug, and second, he decided to take the LSAT and apply to law school. Anthony will now tell you about those events as they are described in the book. So the floor is yours, Anthony.
Thank you. And I just want to say, isn't this nice? Thank you all for being here. The year of this reading is 1972. The place is Los Angeles. Juan had gotten a job with Leibrand, Ross Brothers in Montgomery, but he had to leave Texas in order to get that job. He had to move to California for a Mexican American to get the job. So it starts during the tax season. He noticed a note on the employee bulletin board calling for volunteers to help out the tax department and prepare client tax returns. Juan volunteered and found the work to be more stimulating. Quote, I remember looking at the client's expenditures and having to determine how they're deductible. It's no longer black and white. I now had to ask, is this expenditure deductible? Tax law works that way. I like saving people money on their tax returns. During this first year, Juan also made friends with fellow accountant Ed Winslow. Being an African American in this era, it was not unreasonable for Winslow to suspect that he could also be considered a candidate for a quicker exit when it came time for layoffs. Because even within a company that hired minorities, it was much harder for these minorities, including Juan and Winslow, to rise through the ranks compared to Caucasians. Winslow knew what was coming, the first year layoffs, and he told Juan that they should both study together and take the LSAT. That would give them more options. They would be worth more to the firm. Juan didn't know what the LSAT was, but he took his friend's advice and paid $40 to register for it. When Juan next ran into Winslow a few weeks later at the office, Winslow told him that he in fact didn't register. Perhaps Juan supposed Winslow had changed his mind about his career path. Left alone to study for admission to law school, something he simply never considered, Juan became very nervous about his prospects. He was also anxious about the way things were going at work. Many of his colleagues had been laid off. At one point during his time volunteering in the tax department, Juan brought to the attention of a supervisor, Howard Schaefer, the issue of a client's specific deduction. Juan explained his position that while he didn't consider a particular item to be deductible for the reason that was indicated, he did believe the item could be deducted for a different reason. Impressed by Juan's work, Schaefer asked if he'd ever thought of law school. Maybe that was a good sign that others were recognizing and admitting the way he thought through problems. And in fact, yes, by now he had thought of law school. And he intended to be thinking about it a lot more in the future. Just as importantly, he learned a lesson that he has since passed along from time to time. If you have to tell someone no, try to also tell them how it can be done right. In strategizing about his future, Juan asked Carl Moser, the partner in the tax department, if he could be transferred to his department. No, he was told. He could not transfer because he was not qualified. He needed a master's of business and tax degree or a law degree before he would be considered for such a position. He went home that same evening to discuss his thoughts with Terry. He thought it might be a tough conversation.
Thank you, Anthony. So for reasons you'll have to read the book to find out, Juan ended up attending SUNY Buffalo for his first year of law school. And the first year of law school is difficult no matter where it happens. But for Juan and Terry, being in Buffalo was extraordinarily challenging. Other than Texas, the only other place they had lived was LA. And in Buffalo, Juan was the only Mexican American in his class. Nevertheless, something exceedingly fortunate happened at the end of Juan's first semester in Buffalo, during which he had received an honors grade in criminal law. Terry is now going to tell us about that, and we'll see a slide of the Vasquez family.
Juan and Terry drove home to San Antonio for a couple of weeks before the start of the second semester. It would prove to be a very important trip because it allowed them to enjoy family, friends, and soak in some Texas sunshine. They also visited their friend Eduardo Sáenz. Eddie, who was attending his first semester at the University of Houston Law Center. One day, Eddie asked Juan where he was planning to practice law after graduation. This question made Juan think. While he believed that it was likely they would move back to Texas for his work, it made Juan realize that SUNY Buffalo did not teach community law, nor oil and gas law, which would be on the Texas bar exam. Sáenz also discussed the University of Houston had a lot of diversity, including 10 Mexican Americans first-year students, and that he was involved in increasing enrollment with the Chicano Law Student Association. Sáenz then told Juan that he would be an excellent addition.
Juan was able to transfer to Houston for his second year of law school, and there, serendipity struck again. And Anthony's now going to tell you about that.
This is in September 1975. There were only 10 or 11 students, including Juan, in Professor Ira Shepard's evening corporate tax class, and each person tended to choose the same seat each lecture. Paul Dostart and Juan sat next to each other for many long hours of Shepard's lectures. Over time, they got to know one another a bit. They quickly surmised that they had different upbringings from different backgrounds in different parts of the country. Dostart grew up on a farm in Iowa and was a National Merit Scholar in high school. Although the two young men's levels of confidence, feeling like this was exactly where to be at this time in life, were at opposite ends of the spectrum, their determination to succeed, because this is exactly what was needed to be done at this exact time in life, was certainly on equal ground. They also had something else in common. They were both CPAs. In fact, Dostart was also teaching accounting in the School of Business while attending law school. So they could discuss the black and white nature of accounting versus the myriad ways of interpreting tax law. Notably, at the University of Houston in 1975, Juan stated, there were only 10 Hispanics in the entire law school. He also remembered that this group bonded over their cultural heritage. Quote, they all came from the outlying areas of Texas, including South Texas, Juan said, but they also bonded over the law. Quote, we were learning about the law and how we can fight for the rights of all Americans, including Mexican Americans. Such considerations were important because the Mexican-American civil rights struggles had accomplished much across the country and in Texas. But many understood that just because basic rights for minorities and a guarantee of equality under the law had been legislated by Congress and upheld by the Supreme Court, it didn't mean that in practice, Hispanics, for instance, were being treated much differently. While Juan and Terry had basically kept their focus on simply surviving as a family, their first son, Juan Jr., was born on August 28, 1976. While they endured the third year of law school, they certainly believed in racial equality and would continue to acknowledge their responsibilities to ensure that all Americans were treated with dignity and equality. Most of Juan's corporate tax classmates worked during the day, so Shepard's class was taught at night. In it, Juan found that he was developing something like a passion for tax law, and he wasn't alone. Dostart has similarly fond memories of that class. Quote, Ira Shepard inspired both Juan and me, and I dare say several others. He was an enthusiastic tax professor. He was a fun guy. He made tax fun.
Thank you. Those words are music to the ears of those of us who are law professors on this call. Professor Ira Shepard turned out to be one of the most important mentors Judge Vasquez was to have. Ira, who I had the pleasure of getting to know fairly well through his work doing the important development Saturday afternoon programs at the tax section's winter meetings with Marty McMahon, which I'm sure many of you on this call will recall. Ira not only suggested to Juan and to Paul Dostart that they should get LLMs in tax from NYU, which they both did, but perhaps being true to his surname, Ira was instrumental in shepherding Juan and Terry through the tax court appointment and confirmation process. You will now see slides of Juan packing up his office, the confirmation hearing, and the appointment letter from President Clinton. Ira also spoke at Juan's investiture, which you'll now see a picture of. I'm only sorry that Ira did not live to see the publication of this book and the public acknowledgement of his very important role in Juan Vasquez becoming tax court Judge Vasquez. You'll have to read the book to learn the twists and turns that culminated in the event that produced the picture you're now seeing, but I very much hope you do, because it provides, among other things, an important window into something that is a mystery to many of us garden variety tax lawyers, and that is, how does one become a tax court judge? In Juan's case, the idea seems to have come from Louis Hubbard, who was at the IRS Office of Chief Counsel, where Juan started his career as a tax lawyer after getting his LLM from NYU. Since our time today is limited, I'm just going to ask Terry to read Juan's reaction to the suggestion that he pursue a position on the tax court. Terry.
Juan said, wow, I was shocked that he even brought it up because honestly, we both felt a judgeship was simply beyond our reach, beyond our expectations. Basically, we benched the idea for the rest of this California trip and decided to discuss it further with other professionals before we went back home to Texas.
I now want to switch gears a bit by showing you another side of Judge Vasquez, the charming people side. Judge Vasquez is a people person, And his affability and interest in people resulted not only in the Los Pescadores painting that you saw earlier, and which forms the cover of this book, but it also brought Anthony together with Terry and the judge, thereby creating the tipping point for the writing of this book. And Anthony is now going to read you a condensed version of the judge's meeting with Jesse Trevino and his own involvement with Jesse Trevino, the artist whose work you've now seen several times. Anthony.
Thank you. Let me just explain. This scene takes place in 1982 after Juan and Terry have crisscrossed the nation for jobs and school. Juan is now in private practice for the very first time. And here he meets the San Antonio artist, Jesse Trevino. Now, the reason this scene is kind of special to me is because I wrote a biography of Jesse Trevino, which I just happen to have right here. When I was working on this book, Jesse urged me to talk to Juan and Terry because they had been his friends for so long. As a result, I ended up having the honor of working on Judge Juan's book with Terry as well. Plus, it was kind of fun to describe this scene from Juan's perspective after I had previously wrote it from Jesse's perspective in the book Spirit. Again, this is in 1972. When the Vasquez family returned to San Antonio from Houston, they returned as a family of four. Jaime had been born in Houston on April 21st, 1981, and was a little over the age of 1, while Juan Jr. was about to turn 6 when the family moved into their new house north of downtown, about 5 miles from Juan's new office. It was also close to St. Luke's Hospital, where Terry found work in the cardiac catheterization laboratory and the radiology department. Essentially, Juan was doing the same kind of work as when the government was his employer, only now he was on the other side. He prepared his cases against the IRS rather than for them, but Juan still had to get his name out there. So wherever he went, out came the business cards. Juan handed out his, he was never without his cards and certainly had them on him during a chilly November morning when he was on his way to the office, but decided to stop in a small restaurant, La Fogata, and grab some coffee and a taco. Quote, "I remember that day because it was pretty cold for San Antonio," Juan said. La Fogata had 5 tables inside, and when I got there, all the tables were taken. He spotted a table with only one person sitting at it and moved toward it. Who knows, he thought, the man seated there might need some legal work done. You have to understand, Juan explained, this is the first time I was ever in private practice, so I was always looking for clients. I'd meet people and give them a card and say, quote, "If you have problems with the IRS, give me a call." He was all ready to deliver his usual introduction and asked the man at the table if it would be okay to sit down. The man looked up from his coffee with a bit of a perturbed look and replied, "Well, if you have to." It turned out that Trevino was, in fact, a famous artist, or at least getting famous pretty quickly. Before long, the two discovered they had even more in common, like that they both attended Fox Tech High School. Trevino was 2 years older than Juan and Terry, and they didn't remember one another from high school, but their conversation turned out to be as satisfying as the food they were enjoying. Eventually, Juan had to leave to get to work, but not without first giving the artist his business card. In time, Juan introduced Terry to Trevino, who was dating a woman, Teresa, also called Terry. It didn't take that long before Juan and Terry found themselves truly enthusiastic about art, especially Trevino's work. Over the years, as their friendship with Trevino grew, they would collect several of his works. Their family would also commission original paintings from the artist. Perhaps the most special piece is one they commissioned in 1984. Juan wished to commemorate grandfather Jesus Flores, who instilled an enduring, hardworking spirit in Juan. He supplied Trevino with photographs of Jesus, as well as some images of what one would see, such as the equipment used while working in the fields. When the painting was completed and unveiled, there stood grandfather and grandson side by side, working in an endless field of cotton. Both Jesus and Juan carried full sacks of cotton over their shoulders. A scale mounted on a tripod was set off to the side, as was Don Trini's truck, always waiting for the pickers to finish a row and empty their sacks, and then take the cotton to the gin. It was called Los Pescadores, and when Juan saw it for the first time and saw himself immortalized on canvas with his grandfather, he nearly wept. Happy birthday, Judge.
Thank you.
You bring tears to my eyes too. I want to conclude this portion of the program by showing you two works of art, both important in the judge's life and both revelatory of it. The first is a mural titled American Dream. It occupies two walls in the cafe and bakery Mi Tierra, which means my land, in San Antonio. But before I show it to you, I want to read you Anthony's description of this painting with his permission. With its colorful pescadores, strolling mariachis and piñatas, Mi Tierra Cafe y Panaderia in San Antonio is as much a feast for the eyes as it is for the appetite. Before and after digging into platters of enchiladas, pork tamales, and other Tex-Mex specialties, customers often lose themselves while admiring the vibrant paintings and historic photographs filling nearly every inch of wall space. Not to be missed is the American Dream mural, dominating two walls in the back dining room. And you'll now see a slide of the mural. Featuring portraits of more than 100 business leaders, cultural icons, veterans, politicians, and artists, the American Dream was the idea of Jorge Cortés, the son of Mi Tierra founders Pedro or Pete and Cruz Cortés, who runs the restaurant with his brothers and the extended Cortés family. I wanted to honor my father and mother who came to the US as immigrants, Cortés says of the mural. The mural was started more than a quarter century ago by Mexican artist Jesus Garza, who painted directly on the wall and also sculpted with cement and plaster to lift details of his images. Farmers, Mexican Revolution leaders, Mexican-American laborers, right off the flat surface, presenting them in relief to create a three-dimensional aspect to the work. When Garza passed away, San Antonio artist Robert D. Duarte took over in 2000 and began by working on portraits of Jorge Cortés's parents. The scope of the mural expanded over time to include well-known personalities like musician Carlos Santana and entertainer Vicky Carr. But the mural predominantly showcases local Hispanic leaders, including former Congressman Henry B. Gonzalez, late Archbishop Patrick Flores, and Juan F. Vasquez, the first Hispanic judge on the U.S. tax court, who says, I'm quoting Judge Vasquez, the mural cultivates and preserves our Mexican-American culture, and to be honored in one's hometown is truly humbling. Being included in the American Dream mural has become a point of pride for influential members of the local scene and beyond. Although the people featured are overwhelmingly Hispanic, Cortés insists, it's more about what they've done for the community. Judge Vasquez, of course, has done a lot. The book actually begins with the unveiling of the mural American Dream, showing Judge Vasquez's picture and describing the moment when the spotlight shone on it. One thing I think is particularly touching about Judge Vasquez's picture in American Dream is that it shows him in his judicial robes as Judge Vasquez, but also as the 9-year-old Juan, picking cotton with his grandfather, Jesus Flores, as immortalized in Los Pescadores, which you can see reproduced above the judge's head on the upper left-hand corner of your screen. That picture truly is worth 1,000 words. We'll conclude now by sharing with you another Jesse Trevino painting. But this one is a painting that Juan Vasquez Jr., Terry and the judge's eldest son, commissioned for his parents' 40th wedding anniversary, and which hangs in the judge's chambers alongside Los Pescadores. It is titled Viva Fiesta and shows the judge and his family. And you'll now see Viva Fiesta. As Terry and Anthony observe in the book, the first painting, Los Pescadores, is a reminder of where Juan came from, whereas the second, Viva Fiesta, is a portrait of where he is and what is truly important in his life. And you'll now see both paintings side by side. And now we'll open up the program for audience questions, of which I hope there are many. So I'll turn it back over to you, Lonnie.
Thank you. Thank you, Terry and Anthony, for those readings. It was great. And seeing the images with the program together brought everything full circle. So as Professor Abreu mentioned, we're going to open it up to questions now. There are two ways to ask your questions. Everybody continues to be muted, so you can either type your question into the chat function. So the chat function should either appear towards the bottom or the top of your screen, and it's a little button that says chat and has a little bubble. Or there's also, you can raise your hand. So the way you do that is there's a reactions button. Sometimes if your screen is too small, you'll have like 3 little dots. So you click on the more, and then it'll show you the reactions button, and you can click the reactions button, and there's an option to raise your hand. And so once we see the little hands raised, we will unmute you, and you'll be able to ask your question. But the floor is open, and Terry and Anthony are eager to answer any questions that you may have. And I did see in the chat function that Lindsay Vasquez and Claire Vasquez wished Judge Vasquez a very happy birthday. It's her grandfather.
Can I say something, Lonnie?
Of course, of course.
I want, while we still have Viva Fiesta up on the screen, I know that the judge and Terry got an extra surprise with that painting. And Jesse Trevino gave them a surprise. Do you guys want to talk about how Jesse improved that painting for you, Terry or Judge Juan?
Yeah, I can talk.
Go ahead, Terry.
Okay. I don't see myself on the screen though.
We could see you.
I see you.
I don't see myself at all.
Well, you're probably, at least on my screen, there are 3 screenfuls of people. And so you may just not be on the screenful that you're seeing. But there should be little arrows either on the top or on the side of your screen. And if you click on those, you'll move to other screens and you should eventually see yourself, or you can start speaking and put yourself on speaker view, and then you'll see yourself in full glory.
Okay. Well,
But we can definitely see you. Your video's on.
Yeah, your video's on. We can see you.
Okay, very good. Okay. Well, this particular picture, I'm very excited to talk about also, as well as the other was because our son, Juan Jr., asked me one day after the unveiling, he said, "Mom, we're going to turn the picture back to Jesse because, you know, the mom is not happy because Claire Media, this little girl here with the paint, she's not smiling enough. So I wanted the video to make her smile more." He said, "Is there anything else that you want, Mom?" I mean, once he has it, you know, he has it. And of course, the price increases. I said, "Yes, son. Make your dad a little bit lighter. He's a little bit darker. He's not that tan." And of course, I said, "My son, you know, I'm a dear mom. My son, can you please put flowers in my hair? I love flowers in my hair." But yes, flowers. And then the next question was, I believe. Well, I'll let one answer that one about how we got surprised with the self-portrait. Juanito, you want to tell them about the self-portrait? I think it'd be fun.
I think you muted yourself, Judge.
How about there? Am I okay
There
there?
we go. Yeah,
Yep.
now you're good.
Okay. Yeah, after Jesse was asked to do some changes to the additions and changes to the painting, I asked Jesse, you know, we want to include people that are always with us at the parade. This is the night parade. And so we asked Jesse, it'd be nice if you were in it too. But I thought he was going to put himself somewhere in the crowd. Instead, he put himself really prominently right in the middle. Do you see him with his Guayabera right there in the, can you see?
He's at the
Ira?
top with the white shirt.
Right, and so I was shocked that he had put himself so prominently in the painting. But I was pleased. 'Cause
That was a
he-
nice surprise.
and that's how we got Jesse to put himself in the painting. But
As a rule, you should never ask an artist to redo their painting. Am I correct, Judge?
that is correct. He was not happy to redo it, or to make changes to it, but to redo it. But the interesting, the painting has been appraised at a higher value because Jesse Trevino, a well-known artist, an international known artist, included himself very prominently in the painting.
Right.
So that was been a surprise. So and also a point of levity for us. So it's good. We're very happy with it and very proud of it.
Thanks, Anthony, for bringing that up.
Sorry, on to tax questions.
No, it's totally fine. We do have a question by Samuel Hammer, or if I'm saying your name right. So he says, Judge, happy birthday. Who is a tax court judge you've worked with whose mentorship or friendship you've particularly valued? And what did you value about your relationship?
Very good. Well, I when I first got on the court, I shadowed 3 judges, Judge Irene Scott to LA for a week. And then after that, Judge Joe Gerber. And after that, Judge Rob Rui. And I learned something from each of them. But Judge Marianne Cohn has been extremely helpful to me, give me guidance. And so I'm very close to her, and I appreciate her guidance. At the same time, Terry and I appreciate her friendship. So and all the judges on the court are always willing to help each other. So I've learned so much from so many of the judges. And thanks for the question, Sam. I appreciate it. But each of the judges is very knowledgeable. I've been so impressed with the knowledge of all the judges. You can learn something from each of the judges. Thank you.
We also, we also have a question from 2 additional questions, one from Roberta Mann. So Judge Vasquez, do you want to talk about one of the cases that you find particularly interesting or important?
You know, each of the cases is important to the litigants, especially, and when they're pro se, one of the cases that I'm really proud of is the Higbee case, Higbee. And that's because it was the first time that we were able to define, and it's a division opinion under the 1997 Tax Act. You can shift the burden of proof under 7491A, and from petitioner to respondent, or from the taxpayer to the government. And also we define in that code section what it means to shift, how you shift the burden of proof. And then also under 7491C, what it takes for the government to meet their burden of production to show that a certain penalty is appropriate. So, and what makes me proud of that opinion is why that it's been cited over, it's my understanding, at least about 2,500 times. So it's a very well cited opinion. Another case is just a dependency case called Pavia, Pavia. And that was a case I had in El Paso, Texas. And to me, that was a very important case, even though it's a dependency case. It's very important to the petitioners in that case. The lady, Ms. Pavia, was a bus driver in El Paso, making $13,000 a year, and she was claiming dependency exemptions for her two nephew and niece that she helped support living with her sister, the mom. So, and what that case shows me is the humanity that comes before us at the tax court. That's why we're called America's, I call it we're America's small claims court, almost like America's small court to come to. Because like so many of our taxpayers, roughly 65 to 70% of our petitioners that come before us are unrepresented, and they come into our courthouse and they can have their day in court. There's other ones I can name, Lonnie, and thank you, Roberta, for the question. But each of the cases are very important. And yes, I have cases like General Motors Acceptance Corporation. It's a division opinion that's well cited. And I have other ones that have been cited that are, division opinions in some court conference cases. They're all important. But to me, probably the two most important cases are the Habe case, which is a substantiation case. And again, that we had to define how you shift the burden of proof to the government through 7491A and 7491C, the burden of production for the government on penalties. And the Pavia case, a dependency case that's important to all America. Thank you.
Of course. We have another question from Jessica Herrera. How do you seek to establish mentors as a first-generation lawyer who doesn't come from a family of lawyers? And this is, to any of the panelists have perspective, Judge Vasquez as well, or even Professor Abreu, maybe.
Mentoring is very, very important, and Chief Judge Foley and I have really been involved in a lot of mentoring right from the beginning. When I got on the court, Judge Foley had me and Special Trial Judge John Dean go to elementary school kids, at-risk kids in Maryland, and mentor them and talk to them and just listen to them. We at fifth grade, we can't really talk to them much about tax, but we can be good role models, good role models as attorneys and the people that care and judges. So, and then, our chief judge has set up a speaker series, tax trailblazers, and mentoring is so important. And even what I like to tell college students and law school students, one of the best kept secrets in law school is how much fun tax is. Let me repeat that again. One of the best kept secrets in law school is how much fun tax is. And we have to rely on professors like Alice Abreu and Professor Ira Shepard to motivate us and to make it fun. And they do a wonderful job. Thank you.
Oh, Alice, I think you're muted.
Okay, but we have an easy job because tax is fun. It's just that people don't know it until they see what the tax law is about. But I have to say, I'm exceedingly proud of being an ABA member in occasions like this, because I think it is wonderful that the ABA published your biography and your story, because I think in addition to having mentors, those of us who, like you, did not come from families where there were lawyers, where there was nobody in our ambit that would have, in our family, that would have thought, oh, you can become this. It's so important to see that. And for you in this book to have been open about the fact that, when you were in high school, you were not a straight A student, and you got D's, and nevertheless you made it to the U.S. tax court. And in the tax trailblazer series, I remember hearing that some of those folks got a D in labor law and yet they, it didn't stop them. They learned from it, and that's terrifically inspiring. And so thank you to you and to Terry and to Anthony for bringing us your story, and also to Judge Foley and the Trailblazer series, because that can really make a difference. Terry.
Yes. On that note, I want to thank all my friends, all the people that are here today, and those that could not make it. It is so important for everybody to help each other in this world. To have this book published, of course I'm going to TV right now. To have this book published is very important. It's extremely important to have support of people that really care, and people who believe, and my, Anthony, who believed in us to write us. Of course, I always thank my friend Vasquez, but I had to persuade him. I had to persuade him to sit down and help me write. And then Anthony put it together into a storyteller. He is an excellent storyteller. And for both of you to hosting, but if it wasn't, I agree with you, if it wasn't for the ABA and for Todd, who saw the image, who saw the vision of what he could do, it has opened up many doors across the country, through schools, through organizations, through everyday people. It's for real. Why? It's for real. And we care. And it's for real. So thank everybody. Thank you.
What I want, Professor Bruin, Lanny, what I wanted to add also, one thing that we're very proud of the tax court to encourage young folks to come into tax. The tax court has started a program under Chief Judge Foley, is called DIG Tax, to try to get young interns to come in at the college level or even high school level to get some, get exposed to tax and work in different departments at the tax court. Intern is, so that's very good. But I also want to thank very much the people that have worked on getting this book published. And I want to thank the ABA tax section for publishing this book. And Professor Bruin, I want to thank you for doing a wonderful job in presenting this. And Lanny, thank you for being the chair of the diversity committee. And Anthony Head, thank you for being a wonderful storyteller and putting it together. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to have been here today. I think from speaking when I had initial discussions with Terry, one of the sort of inspirational parts of it for me was just hearing from her why the motivation behind this was, really how can we reach more students or people who may think that this is just, it's a different world and it's not something I can partake in because I don't have sort of the background or the history there in my family. And I think this is an important publication for the ABA to really demonstrate a different side of tax, right? That not everybody comes from this perceived notion of a family of attorneys or in some other sort of profession, but you can also explore tax and develop a love for tax, even if you don't come from that. And I think particularly with the ABA, I know I came to tax very late in my career, but I think finding the public interest side of tax, we also hear a lot about the sort of the corporate and the companies, but there's a whole nother side of tax that's representing, as Judge Vasquez mentioned, taxpayers who are represented, particularly low-income taxpayers. And so even if you want to go into a career in public interest, it doesn't mean that tax is not going to be able to meet your needs. There's also a public interest component of tax that can suit the needs. So with that, I think we're just about time. I know we had a few more questions, really good questions, but I just want to say thank you so much to Professor Abreu, to Terry, Anthony, and Judge Vasquez also for participating and for putting this together. It's been an incredible program. If you're interested in learning more about the book, there are links available. I believe Todd just put information about where to purchase the book. And I also want to just briefly thank Todd. Thank you so much, Todd, for one, not only helping shepherd this book through, but also helping put this panel together and pushing it through. So we really appreciate your help. And thank you, DeMarcus, for helping us run the Zoom today. We appreciate that. Any final words, Professor Bro, Terry, Anthony?
Thank you to everybody.
I'm sorry. As a mom, I have to say thank you, sons and daughter-in-laws and grandchildren.
Can I say thank you to my grandchildren that are here, and thank you for all our friends that are here. And there's so many of y'all, and I wanted to say hello to everyone, and it's nice to see everyone. And Major Reddick, congratulations on your promotion, and nice to have you here. And thank you for serving our country. And I want to give all my colleagues at the tax court that are on the tube, that are here also, thank you for being here. Thank you for your support. And I, again, want to give a shout out to our Chief Judge Foley, who was here earlier, and I think he's still here with us. And so thank you. And this has been, I am tremendously honored by what the ABA has done with this book when they published it. I'm honored and I'm very humbled. I'm always humble, and I am humbled today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lonnie. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Anthony. And we're available to talk again. Anybody, any organization.